And here I am in Sacramento, California, laying on a hospital operating table. And the doctor goes, "We're going to stop your heart. We're going to stop your lungs. And it's only a machine that's keeping your body alive." So gives me an injection. Boom. All of a sudden, I go from laying on that table to instantaneously, I'm standing in India and I see 18 rishis. And the guru folds his arms and he goes, "I promise you more pain than you've ever had in your life. I promise you more suffering than you've ever had in your life." And then he just kind of does this with his hands. And then these clouds, the clouds are filled with visions of faces, old people, young people, all kinds of people. And he says, "If you don't come back, all these people won't receive the gift that you can give them, whatever gift they were come looking for."
The A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast.
We are here with Reverend Bill McDonald. He's a multiple near-death experiencer. Hello, Reverend. How are you?
Well, it's always good to talk to you again, AJ.
Let's begin with your childhood near-death experience.
I was deathly ill, deathly ill. I had 6 diseases during my childhood, all at the same time. Started with getting a case of the mumps, and that kind of broke down my immunity. And then I got chest infection, which led to double pneumonia, and then that led to eventually having other diseases, and eventually cascaded down to my kidneys got infected. And I ended up with a kidney disease that at the time was not curable at the time. And I was rushed to the hospital and taken in and taken away from my parents and strapped on a gurney and rolled down a hall, just like you see in the movies where you see the lights above you and you're in a gurney in the hospital and you're just going down the hallway. And I'm all alone. Picture an 8-year-old child, never been away from home, never been away from parents. And all of a sudden now you're beginning a journey of actually being isolated and alone and away from your family for 1 year. That was the beginning night. I was taken and I was taken to an isolation ward, and then they did a procedure because my lungs were filling up with fluids, and they did a procedure and took all these, not all of them, but as many fluids out of me as they could out of my lungs. And nobody held my hand, nobody hugged me, nobody explained what was going on. My parents have already gone home. They didn't even wait around in the waiting room. It was like I'm totally on my own. And the last thing I remember them telling my parents was, "You kind of waited a little too long to bring this kid in. We're not sure he's even going to make it tonight." So you got to imagine, I'm hearing this, and these adults are talking, and they're only a few feet away, and I'm going, "What? What?" And then everybody leaves me alone. So after this procedure, they put me in this room, turned the lights off. It's total darkness. I'm in great pain. Chest is in pain, the kidney's in pain. And if you had kidney disease pain, it's always back pain and then you're dizzy and you're weak and a lot of stuff going on. And I could hardly breathe. And I'm laying there in the darkness. The number one thing I'm dealing with in the darkness is I'm all alone. I'm all alone. There ain't nobody here. It's like I'm going through something. There's not even an adult that's holding my hand. There's not even a nurse in a room with monitors, nothing. I'm not even hooked up to a machine, nothing. I'm just laying there in this bed and they all walk away like, well, if he's there in the morning, it'd be okay, right? So I'm laying there and all of a sudden this intense pain ceases. And I was having a hard time breathing. Now I'm not breathing. It's just boom. But it's instantaneous. This feeling of weightlessness, this lightness, L-I-G-H-T, like light coming at you, and lightweight. It's like lightness within me and around me. I feel like I'm a feather. I'm just floating. And in this darkness, then the darkness just gets lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. And I realize as I and when when you're on the other side here, we don't have eyes to look down. I mean, we don't have physical body to look down, but the awareness of my child's body, is below me. And even at that age, I'm looking at this body below me, and I'm thinking, That's not me. I'm glad that's not me because I'm whatever this is. You don't have the vocabulary at that age to this is consciousness or whatever, but it was I was me. My consciousness was me. It was never that body. I was just, you know, my buddy, the flesh buddy, place for your soul to reside. But it was always about consciousness, and there's no break. Next thing you know, I'm I'm cognizant of everything around me, and what's around me is love. I'm starting to feel more love and more love and more love and more light. The light and the love seem to be one and the same. So as the light surrounds me, it's love surrounding me. And I mentioned this in your book as well, where I talk about it was a feeling of like having, because I had an Italian grandmother, it's like having a million Italian grandmas, pinching your cheeks and hugging you and just loving you. If you can imagine a million Italian grandmas doing that to you, it was just the most love experience you can have. It's like standing on a cloud. And I say this because I can see this in my mind, and I experienced it in real life, like in Vietnam when I'm in a helicopter, we're flying up in the clouds, and I got the doors off the helicopter. There's totally open, and we're flying through a cloud. There's clouds inside my helicopter. You can reach out and you're touching and I remember that I'm going, I'm touching this exact feeling I had at that moment as I'm having this near-death experience. And of course, it wasn't called a near-death experience. I had no clue what was. It was just me, and I was having this adventure, this journey. So at 8 years old, that's you hear these people and they say, "Well, when I died, and then I had this life review and how things affected." Well, at 8 years old, what are you going to review? I mean, there's not much to review. So I had something which I haven't really run across too many other. In fact, I haven't run across anybody else that's experienced exactly the same thing. But I had basically a review of life forward. And at the time, I didn't know how long it was going forward, but history and living it and going through it, it ended up being 50 years to the day of this event. 50 years forward, I was getting snapshots and images and experiences that were going to be realized in my life. And then when I saw them, I realized two things. Number one, well, if I'm seeing these things in the future, obviously I got to go back to that stupid little body down there. I can't avoid. I'm not dead. I'm coming back, right? So that's the first disappointment. Oh my God, I got to go back, right? So I haven't met anybody yet that's had an experience that says, God, I got to go back. Help, get me back in that body. No, it's like, oh my God, I got to go back to that body because it was one of those things. Like, no, you signed up for this. You got to go back. You got to do all these things. So I saw in this vision forward, I saw my wife in high school, and I knew she was going to be my wife, and I saw her as we got married. And it's interesting because I met her in 1960. We were both 14. Um, we're still together, and we're she's 79, I'll be 80. It's there you are, right? So it's 60 something years together. That's no small feat nowadays. But I knew she was going to be the one. I saw my children. I saw myself in high school, and I saw myself seeing the Kennedy assassination, President John F. Kennedy. And I remember I took that vision forward when I was in high school. I actually went to school principal and other people and authority 3 weeks before the death in Texas. I told the people, I go, hey, they're going to kill the president in Dallas, Texas. They're going to kill him, right? And yeah, Billy, settle down, settle down. So I saw that. I saw myself in a war. I didn't know it was the Vietnam War because this is like 1954, 55. And French Indochina, there was French Indochina, not Vietnam. And there was a French fighting the Viet Minh and all that kind of stuff. So I had no clue about that world stuff. But I saw myself in a helicopter that wasn't even invented then. It was the Huey helicopter. It kind of looked like a tadpole. And I saw myself sitting behind a machine gun, and I saw all these events, and I saw people getting killed, wounded. I saw what was happening to me, which made my time in Vietnam interesting because I'd get these deja vu moments, hours or days before events were going to happen because I was remembering them from this experience. And it kept me safe, and I tried to keep others safe. But, you only can control your own destiny, and you have no control over anybody else's. Very little, very little. So I saw that, and I saw world events happening and things going on and on and on and on. But that was up to the end of that vision. The end of that vision was an adult me, and I had a beard, a white beard, so I know it was a long time in the future. And I saw myself hiking up these Himalayan mountains to Babaji's cave. I knew it was Babaji's cave. I just this is where I'm going, Babaji's cave. And I'd learned about Babaji's cave at about 7, 8 years old when my mother read me that chapter from the autobiography of a yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. So that story was just like, oh, Babaji. I mean, I got to go to that. I got to go to that cave. And back then, nobody was advertising where it was at. There was no tours to it or nothing else. But I wanted in my life, sometime, I wanted to go to that cave. And I saw at the end of this vision, uh, that was the last thing I saw is myself sitting in that cave meditating. So that's where that vision, ended. And then, of course, I came to, and my body was full of pain and suffering, and I spent 1 year of my life, uh, a hostage to that hospital. I mean, I wasn't allowed to get out of bed. I wasn't allowed to walk around. I didn't have visitors, but like once a week for about 10, 15 minutes, once a week, family come by, say hi, bye. No gifts for Christmas, no birthday celebration, no television, no radio, no record player, no smartphone, dub phone, no phones, no books, no magazines, no coloring books, nothing. Best thing that ever happened to me because it gave me this playground of the mind where I had all this chance to wander and just discover my real self. And I started making up these meditation techniques. I thought I was making them up. I was trying all these different things. And then 50 years later, on my first trip to India, I discovered that all these techniques that I thought I'd made up that were my own invention were actually in reality ancient Tibetan monk rituals and techniques. And I somehow, at 8.5 years old, laying in bed here, I thought I was making it up. Actually, I was obviously remembering and recounting something I already knew. I obviously didn't make them up at all. And so my sojourn in the hospital, a year was, it could have been very lonely and sad. It could have been major suffering. It was always painful. But I turned it into what I call my apprentice monk uh, part of my life. In other words, I had an opportunity to be alone, nothing but time, no job to go to, no duties, no school, no nothing else. And every day I could explore the deeper, real self. And so, in exploring myself, um, my whole life enriched. I got deeper and deeper and deeper. And I started working on healing techniques because I wanted to get out of the hospital. And it was basically like, you're going to be, forever kind of thing. But I basically developed techniques using yoga, tension and energy and visualization and things that I had learned from my mother. And she'd learned some of this stuff from Self-Realization Fellowship, from their lessons that they used to send out on recharging the body. Well, I took those lessons on recharging the body to make the body ready for meditation as recharging my body for health. And I realized if I just took that, I could anyway. A year later, I do get out of the hospital, and there's a whole long history of stuff that happened after that, like healing dogs and animals and a lot of self-discovery and things happened. But I noticed as my life went on, these this vision that I kind of was trying to forget because well, it's a vision, you know. And all of a sudden I realized through a series of deja vus or total, I know this is going to happen moments that what I saw in the visions were in reality actually unfolding in front of my life. 50 years later, I find myself going to India, to the Himalayan mountains, finding this ashram and it led to where finding the cave was at and this adventure to the cave, which was life threatening because there was nobody to show me how to get there. The trails weren't marked, and I was having heart problems. I was having uh, all kinds of issues with dizziness and everything. I finally get to the cave. I go inside, and I spent this beautiful 45 minutes or an hour in there meditating and feeling like I finally reached the pinnacle. It's like you're trying to get to the top of the mountain. I kind of felt like, well, you know, I spent 50 years to get here. Here I am. Maybe this is it. I mean, that was the end of the dream. I'm looking at this and thinking, this is the last vision I had. This is the last image I had. Is me sitting in this cave. So, and I'm having my heart's just going crazy and I'm dizzy and everything. And so we leave the cave. I was with a friend and we're walking down this trail and we got lost and we're wandering and I'm standing next to a 30-foot drop off a cliff. And this heart just like, it's like somebody's got their hands with long fingernails and they're inside my chest and they're squeezing my heart with their long fingernails and their thumbs and everything. And my heart's just like, oh boy, this is just crazy, right? And and all of a sudden I'm getting lightheaded and all of a sudden it's dark. I'm gone. It's boom. The body stopped. There's no more pain. It's just I find myself obviously falling. I fall off a 30-foot cliff and I hit a couple of ledges on the way down. So it wasn't a straight drop at 30 feet. It was like hit 12 feet, hit 20 feet, then I'm on a rock. Uh, and literally on a rock in a hard place, right? Between a rock and a hard place. That's where I'm at. On top of this rock, looking up at the sky. And I realize I'm not looking up at the sky because this body is, I'm not in the body. The body's looking up at the sky, you know, just laying there. But I'm above it and I'm floating again. And I go, oh, wait a minute. I remember this. This is what happened to me when I was a child of 8.5. Now at 58.5, and I actually went back to look at this thing on a calendar and everything. And it's I can't prove it because I didn't have it written down, but it looks like exactly 50 years to the day of my own experience as a child, 50 years to the day I'm having this near death experience. So it's like bookends, you know, here's a 8.5-year-old having experience, and he goes to 58.5 years old, and there's this life in between two near death experiences. But I've seen it all. And so I have the awareness of leaving and distancing away from the body, which is below me. And again, just like when I was a child, I looked down at this old guy down there with a white beard and and sandals, and he's laying there, and his body's all bent funny, laying on this rock. And I'm going, well, thank God I'm not that guy. That's, you know, I'm good. And then I'm thinking, you know, because I'm getting up higher and higher. My consciousness is obviously, and I see my friend looking down the cliff, like very concerned at looking at my body down there. And I realized that, oh, maybe that's it. Oh, that's not too bad. But I've been to Babaji's cave, so I've been through the whole 50. Maybe this is okay. This is okay. I'm not going to fight it. This is all right. And I'm just kind of drifting, and it's just my consciousness. But there was no break between the time the body blacks out, boom, and awakening in this state. And again, that great love that you feel. Except this time, I'm feeling this love, and it's coming below me as well. I'm sensing love at my feet on the body. As my body's laying across this rock, there's this large, I'm talking about a cobra. So I don't think there's anything other than the word large when you're talking about a cobra. There's cobras, but they're all large, right? I mean, if it's on you, it's large. So this wild cobra, it's not one of those tame ones, and it's crawling across my legs, and it's on my thighs, and it's on my ankle, and it's got this big body, and I see its head go over. It's coming out of the grass on one side, it's going to the grass on the other side. But within me, it's not fear, it's not anxiety, it's an overwhelming power of love itself, love for that snake, for that cobra. It's like, I love that cobra. I just like, I got to grab it. And it was such an overwhelming love for it. It was like, it was like an angel standing over my body with two paddles, right? Defibrillators, and go clear, right? Clear. It was like, boom. It's like my heart got jump started from the love of that snake. It was just like boom, and I jump up, and I'm back in the body, and the snake is still on my sandals, and I'm reaching down and I'm grabbing and I'm trying to grab the snake. And I always tell people, Joe, imagine a snake occupying that space between you where your fingers don't touch, your thumbs don't touch, fingers don't touch. It's like that. You can't touch. The body's is that big. It slithers through your hands, just slithering. I mean, most people would not grab a wild cobra and try to pick it up, right? I mean, you'd say it's slithering, let it go, right? This is good. It's moving past me. It's getting off me. But I chase it through the grass, and I got, like bare feet and sandals, and I got nothing to stop, like a big, boots of some kind. I got sandals. This thing's gonna bite me in the foot. It's gonna be a good bite. Never, never a thought of anxiety. Never a thought of fear. No fear. It was all love. And I kept trying to grab it and touch it. And then it slithers into this little canyon. I follow it to a little sliver of water coming down, about a 9-foot waterfall, but it was not massive flowing. It was just a kind of a trickle. And behind this water, the stream of water, was a cavern, like a cave. And the snake crawled up and through the water, and behind the waterfall, it curled up and it's put up its hooded head and its tongue coming out, of course. And it's just looking at me, and I'm looking at it. I'm just outside the waterfall, about an arm's reach away, and we're just staring at each other. And then all of a sudden I hear my friend, "What are you doing?" Going crazy. Anyway, so I didn't quite understand the experience of what motivated all this love for a cobra. And I didn't understand the symbolism in India they have for cobras. Because you studied AJ, I know you've written about it and talked about it when people talk about the Kundalini energy in the spine. It's the cobra kind of represents that. And Lord Shiva's got, cobra around his neck, and Buddha has this cobra shading him so he can meditate. There's something about a cobra that's very spiritually, there's an image there, spirituality and energy. I didn't know anything about that. But I left that encounter, and you would think a normal person would say, I just fell off a cliff. I just had a heart attack. First thing I do when I survive, when I get back, I should go to the doctor, right? No, no. First thing I do when I go back is I continue my journey for a couple more months in India, and I'm ended up in the desert, Rajasthan, in the big desert area. And I'm climbing up this desert mountain, and it past this little temple. And this temple's got a courtyard and stones, cobblestones. And I see this old woman, and she's got a basket full of cobras, like 5, 6, 7. And she's got a stick, and she's banging this stick on the basket. And the cobra's getting mad, and all the bodies are coming up, and, they're getting angry and everything. She's trying to attract tourists over to take a look at her, spend some money there with her cobras. And I see her doing that, and I'm with my friend, and I just go running across this courtyard, and I stand right over the basket. The basket's between my legs. I'm straddling it, and the cobras are coming up in my between my crotch, and my hips, and I mean, and I'm waving my hands making big movements like this, yelling at her to stop doing this to these poor animals. So I'm speaking loud and making a lot of movements, and they're all over me, right? All of a sudden, one of them crawls into my t-shirt and it wraps itself about three times probably around my stomach, and I feel this compression. It's there, and the other one slithers up and wraps around my neck three times and comes out. It's like here. I turn around to look at this cobra with his big fangs coming down, and I feel on my the eyelash go. It's the tongue from the snake, kind of like the ultimate butterfly kiss, but it's so I don't know how close the cobra's got to be to do that, but it's like right there, right? So I turn around and I see this open mouth with the fangs. It's open like it's just getting ready to just pounce on me, right? And I'm feeling such overwhelming love, just like I did a few weeks before when I fell off the mountain. I feel that same love. And I'm looking inside. And I mean, literally, I'm looking down the throat of this cobra. It's a dark tunnel, it's a cavern, right? It's like inviting me in. And I just mentally, emotionally, visually, actually, spiritually, I'm flowing inside of this cobra. I'm flowing into the darkness. And I don't know how many minutes it was. How it could have been 20 minutes, it could have been 2 minutes. I have no idea. But all of a sudden, the cobra and I are doing this stare down. I'm 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 inside it, and we're just there as one. Just and until my friend starts screaming at me, "Hey, it's gonna bite you in the eye," something. Anyway, but it was like a oneness with that. It just felt so right. Pretty soon the one around the stomach, unraveled and went down my leg and, back in the basket. And I finally ended up taking this one off and, putting it back in the basket. But it was like there was something there. And I didn't know what it was until I went back to India several years later after I met this guru. And I was invited to his ashram. This was in 2009. And I got there in December and I stayed till March. And when I first got there, he had these hooches or these little bungalows. They were kind of primitive. They weren't exactly, modern. I mean, cement floors, uh, and simple, very, very simple. And none of them had any artwork inside of them or pictures or anything. They were just walls, except for one. And he says, I got the perfect room for you. And he didn't know my stories, didn't know anything about the cobras. And he brings me in this room, and there's a desk there for me to. None of the other rooms had a desk. This one had a desk so I could write because he knows I was working on a book apparently. And he says, "I thought this picture in this room would be perfect for you, and I think you'll understand when you see it." And I go in there, and above the desk is this big poster of Lord Shiva, and I see this snake wrapped around his neck, and looking at him like that, and I'm going, yeah. And so then he takes 5 minutes or 10 minutes and he explains to me the symbolism of the cobra and the Kundalini energy and meditation and all these spiritual things he got into, which was some really deep stuff. And I was just like, oh. And so basically, without him knowing about my snake experience, he basically explained to me that this was symbolic of the energy within your Kundalini energy growing. And obviously there was a connection there and he was connecting it. So that's another whole deep story. So fast forward after several years coming and going from this ashram, I finally have a heart attack there in let's see, what was it? 2011. I have a heart attack and I collapse. I've been introducing him at various venues in Mumbai and Pune and some other places. And he was talking to some large groups. He'd get crowds of, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 people. And so I'd introduce them and I guess he wanted me to talk because I just get up there and introduce me and I'll come on there. So I get up there and he told the person that was running the place, he says, yeah, just have McDonald go up there and talk until I get there. I'm going to be a few minutes late. So I entertained 5,000 people while they're waiting for him, right? So and you know me, AJ, there's no loss for words ever being an Irishman. I mean, I could talk forever, right? So I find out later on, after I've been talking about 30 minutes, that he was actually hiding backstage. He just wanted me to give a good introduction to him. He wanted to hear me talk. Anyway, later on at one of these events, after I was off stage, I had a heart attack and I collapsed. And I ended up having to be taken to a ER in Mumbai. And of course, the ER goes, hey, you should, you need an operation. It's really bad. You got to get, leave. And so I go back to the ashram and I'm packing up my bags to leave India to go home and get open heart surgery in California. And so I leave, I get on an airplane, of course, coming back, I have a blood clot. They actually let me, after I'm in ER for a heart attack, they actually let me get on an airplane and fly halfway around the world, right? I mean, it's like, I'm looking at that with common sense now, thinking, of course you got a blood clot, right? I was like, come on. So I end up getting to Sacramento eventually, and I get there, and the doctor sees me and immediately puts me in ER, immediately puts me in ICU, intensive care, for 4 days before they can even think about operating on me. And this is where things get kind of weird because now I'm going to go back because there's a piece of this story that if you understand that, you'll understand what happens next in this next. Well, it's almost inappropriate to call a near-death experience. It's something even totally beyond weirder than that. We could say it's a near-death experience. We could say it's something else. So we'll go with something else for now. But meanwhile, the year before, in 2010 in India, the guru ordered me, in fact, to go get what's called a Nadi palm leaf reading. He told me, you go to Pune, I want you to get a reading done, this Nadi palm leaf reading. I had no idea. I thought first off, palm, he was going to read the palm of my hands. I don't need no fortune tellers. And I said, I don't believe in these readings. And he says, no, but they believe in you. Go. And I said, well, what is it? And then he explained to me that 2,500 to 5,000 years ago, the great rishis, there's 18 of them, these great rishis, they channeled the lives and information that people would need uh, in centuries, decades, millenniums further on from where they're at. In other words, 5,000 years ago, the guy that did my reading uh, was predicting this stuff 5,000 years in advance of where he was writing this thing. He was channeling this information and somebody was scribing it on a palm leaf, the wood from a palm. That's why it's a palm leaf reading. They take the fronds off and it's just this piece of wood and they carve out what this guy tells them to carve off and then they shellac it to preserve it. But every 200-300 years or so or more, it starts to get worn and torn. So somebody else will rescribe it. And in the process, sometimes some of the information gets changed or misinterpreted, but basic knowledge is there. So I'm listening to that and I'm going, yeah, 5,000 years ago, as this guy writes about me now. Yeah, it's just, I'm thinking fantasy world. I'm not believing any of this. And also, he wants me to go down and get it done that day. I did not know then what I know now, which is if you give your thumbprint, because that's how they find it. Yeah, right thumbprint for a man, left thumbprint for a woman. I don't know why the difference. So that's all I'm told. I go down there, I'm not going to believe anything. But what I didn't know was when you get it done today, let's say you go someplace in India and you get it done, they take your reading, they take your thumbprint, boom, and then they start to look for your what they call a bundle, these leaves. And they could be anywhere 20, 30, 40 different places in India. They could be in libraries. They could be in some guru's house, or some family has it, some royal family. They're all over the place. They're not like in one place where you go to and it's computerized. No, it's all over. So when you get a thumbprint, these guys send somebody out and they go looking for your individual leaves to get the reading from. And it could take weeks, months. They might, 6 months, a year. Sometimes they may not even find it. because you only find it when you're ready to receive it. And so I didn't know that. So when I get my thumbprint. Uh, Nowadays, you'd give your thumbprint and you'd walk out and give them your email or something to contact you when they found it. And you'd come back or Zoom it or something. But I sat down. I said, no, wait. I wait. I could have been there for a year, right? I'll wait. I just assumed since the guru told me to go get it done that day and said it would, it would happen. I just stayed there. And a couple hours later, they brought me into a room and smoke filled, full of, incense. Must have been 200 incense burning. And it's like in the movies, right? It's like a cloud of incense, right? And it had every holy picture and every holy statue from every Catholic saint to every Indian saint and sage and mythology and Jesus, divine divine mother. It had, Mary, Joseph, had everything you could think about in the way of religious memorabilia this room had. It was like amazing, right? And I get in there and it's very theatrical, and I'm still not I'm still kind of going, yeah, okay, fine. I'm not really into this. And then they started going through the bundles. He brought a big bundle that had 20 leaves in it. Kind of looks like Venetian blinds. And so he takes a leaf, and the rule is this: he will ask you a series of questions. It's either yes or no, true or not true. If you say no, he takes that leaf, sets it aside. That's not you. Even though you might have matched 10 things on there, he gets to number 11. It's no, it's not you. Somebody similar, but it's not you. So he finally gets to leaf number 7 after rejecting the first 6. And he goes, intuitively, I know this leaf is yours. Yeah, okay, fine. I'm still not a believer at this point. I'm going, yeah, fine. And then he goes, your name is 4 letters long. Well, my nickname, Bill, I mean, I'm actually William, right? So legally, no. But in the real world, I'd never never go by William except on my passport, driver's license. That's it, right? Everything else is Bill. So I go, yeah, okay, I'll give him that one. Okay. It's 4 letters long, Bill. And then he goes, and your name starts with a B. I go, yes. And he goes, it's Bill. And I go, okay. And he says, and your father's name was, meaning your father's dead. And he says, your father's name was exactly the same as you. Well, I'm Junior. So my father's name was exactly the same, Senior, right? He was Bill McDonald as well. And then he goes, and your mother's name was Marcella, and your wife's name is Carol, and then you have 2 children, a boy and then a girl born, and then you had this, and everything about my present life, 40 questions, he's right on it. Right on it. The essence of this reading that leads to the near-death experience was the predictions they made. They predicted this was going to happen, that was going to happen. One of the things they predicted was the following year, 2011, that I would come back to India and I would go to this Shiva temple in southern India. And when I got there, I'd recognize this is the place I'm supposed to be. And I'd walk uphill 2 to 4 hours, whatever it took. And at the top of this hill, I would encounter all 18 rishis. The rishis would be waiting for me there. And they'd be sitting around a sacred fire and on logs and rocks and everything. And I wouldn't ask any questions because I knew the answers. And anyway, so that was the whole thing. I'm going, what a weird prediction is that? That's just really crazy, right? And they made another couple of predictions, which I'll talk about when I talk about the near-death experience. So it was like, okay. So when I had this heart attack in India, it was that same year I was supposed to go to that. But I left the country and I'm in the hospital. Now I'm getting ready to get operated on. And I'm thinking, well, that prediction is not right, because if it was today, it's operating day, right? Today I'd be going to that temple, right? And here I am in Sacramento, California, laying on a hospital operating table, totally butt naked, freezing freezing and getting ready to have my chest ripped open and basically killing me here. And I thought, well, okay, that prediction wasn't right. So that was just in my mindset. So I lay down, I'm on the bed, the hospital, table, And I asked the doctor, I said, well, what are you going to do exactly? And he goes, well, he says, see this tool over here? This, I'm going to cut your chest. And then he has these like clippers, like, like you prune trees with, right? Like pruners. He said, I'm going to cut your ribs. And he got a chest expander. And he goes to the whole description. I just want to know what he was going to do. All he had to do is say was, I was going to surgically open you. But he gives me a whole description. And, uh, and he says, and then I'm going to cut this artery, that artery, and going to get quadruple bypass surgery, meaning he says, we're going to stop your heart. It's not going to be beating. We're going to stop your lungs. You're not going to be breathing. And we're going to have your arteries hooked up to this machine, and we're going to be having blood, oxygenated blood flowing into you. And it's only a machine that's keeping your body alive. And in essence, he says, he's telling me this. I'm getting ready to, he says, basically, we kill you, but we're keeping the body alive while we operate on you, which I thought, I didn't need to hear that, right? I mean, that was like needless information. So the only other question I asked was, I said, am I going to feel anything? And he says, well, he says, around 5%, maybe less. People, the anesthesia just doesn't work that good at the end, and they tell us they feel something. So that was the last thought I had, that the anesthesia wears off. So gives me an injection, boom. All of a sudden, I go from laying on that table to instantaneously, I'm standing in India. I feel the sun on me. I feel sweat coming down. I'm in clothing. I'm dressed. And I look around. I'm in this courtyard. And I look over, and on this little place over the side, there's this Shiva temple, the one that I was predicted to go to. That's the Shiva temple. And it registers. I'm going, I don't need any signage. I go, that's a Shiva temple. And I look over, there's a hill. And I said, I got 8 hours of surgery. What am I going to do? And it's like, and I'm not an astral body or a ghost or apparition or floating around. You know, people are seeing me, people are touching and bumping into me. I'm actually a body. I'm actually a physical me standing there. So it's different than, you go over and you float around and you watch it. No, I'm actually in a body separate from the body that's on the table. But when I think about the body on the table, I actually kind of feel like hands and instruments in my chest, but it's not in this body, it's in the other body. So it's like a heightened awareness that there's something going on there. So I got nothing but time. I got 8 hours of surgery facing me. So let's walk uphill. And I'm totally aware of my steps and my walking and the sunshine and the heat and the crowd and the people and the sky. This is totally like normally walking up a hill. And then I get to the top of the hill, and I know they're going to be there because that's what I've been told. I realize, well, this is the day I'm supposed to be here. This is the day they predicted I was going to be here. And yet, here I am, but not traveling there the way I thought I was going to travel by airplane, train, and getting a ride and walking up the hill. No, I'm there via surgery. My body is dead over there in California, halfway around the world. I'm walking up this hill, and I get to this top of this hill, and there's a clearing, and I see 18 rishis, just like I envisioned. I mean, 18 rishis, just like I see, and they're sitting, they're standing, there's a big sacred fire, and then there's one other person. The guru who sent me for the reading. He's there, got his arms folded like he's waiting for me, right? And I walk in there, and you'd think I'd have 1,000 questions, like what's going on? Nothing. I'm just not even excited. I go, yeah, okay, fine. This is what's supposed to happen. I'm good. No questions. And the guru guy that sent me, he looks at me and he goes, Bill, you can skip a few beats, but don't give up heart. And he says that 2 or 3 times to me. And I go, well, that's kind of odd. Well, maybe he's concerned about my surgery or something. And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, um, I hear this voice from the clouds, feminine, soft, feminine, beautiful voice, angelic, sound like a woman in her early 20s that, figures some saintly vision of a woman it was just that kind of voice. It was like, wow, that's just saintly. And the voice goes, Bill, Give up your heart. Let it go. Relax. I promise you nothing but joy, peace, bliss. I promise you no pain. Basically, rewards for all the work you've done. You owe nobody nothing. Just come, embrace this. Just give up the heart. In other words, just give in and come. And I'm thinking, yeah, because last time I remember that body was pretty painful and had umpteen surgeries and umpteen heart attacks before that. And so this voice is trying to convince me to go. And then pretty soon I hear the guru go, Peter, don't give up heart. You can skip a few beats, but don't. I go, what is this? I said, why? She's promised me love, peace, joy, bliss. What do you promise me? And he folds his arms and he goes, I promise you more pain than you've ever had in your life. I promise you more suffering than you've ever had in your life. I promise you that everything that you thought you were gifted with, like how to deal with pain, you got to relearn because you're not going to have that magic anymore. You're going to have to do everything the hard way. I go, what? He says, you come back. I promise you more pain than you've ever had in your life. And I go, what kind of sales pitch is this? I promise peace, love, bliss. And you're telling me I come back and you promise me pain, suffering. You got to relearn stuff. And I go, that ain't good enough. Well, no. And then he goes, and this. And then he just kind of does this with his hands. And then these clouds, remember my first near-death experience with the clouds with vision forwards? Same kind of thing, except this time the clouds are filled with visions of faces, old people, young people, all kinds of people, South Americans, North Americans, Africans, Asians, Europeans, every walk of all these thousands of faces. And then there was some dogs and there was some cats and even some birds and other small animals. And I'm going, what's all this? And he says, you don't owe these people or these animals or any of these souls anything. There's no karmic debt. You owe them nothing. You don't have to do anything. But if you don't come back, all these people won't receive the gift that you can give them, whatever that gift may be. Could be love, could be healing, could be peace, could be a smile, could be understanding, whatever it is, inspiration, whatever gift they were come looking for, they're not going to receive it because you're off enjoying bliss and peace, right? Well, yeah, how selfish of me. So, and I'm going through this whole fight, and I'm going, well, that's not enough. I'm not really convinced. I'm going, well, that's really great, but and he goes, and I promise you all the pain and suffering. I go, why? Why? He says, because you have to learn how to handle the pain, so you can teach people without magic of yoga or anything else. You got to be able to teach people how to self-heal, how to take care of their own pain. And you have to learn that by being one of them. And you have to have all this pain. You got to take on all this stuff because how do you learn to handle pain unless you have pain? And I'm going, what a terrible argument. The next thing I know, back on the operating table, apparently, they're getting ready to do this with the paddles again. Click, restart my heart. And I'm there, and all of a sudden, whoop, I feel my body being messed with. The next thing I know, they start my heart. I find myself inside this body again. So I went from one body, a body, to this body on the table. And with an acute awareness that the anesthesia is worn off, it's like, holy cow. And then I'm feeling everything. And I got my eyes taped shut. I'm strapped to this operating table so I can't move, because they want to make sure you don't move around. I got a big, huge tube wrist thing down my throat, so I can't talk. So I can't see them with my eyes. I can't talk. I can't communicate with my hands or anything else. And I'm feeling everything they're doing. They're still cutting, they're still stitching, they're still wiring the rib cage together and everything. And I hear this voice, it sounded like the anesthesiologist telling the surgeon, hey, doc, he says, looks like this patient's, the anesthesia's wore out. Looks like they're feeling everything. And the doctor goes, I don't worry about it. We only got another 40 minutes. I'm going, in my mind, I'm going, 40 minutes? 40 minutes with no anesthesia. And we're talking about stapling my chest and sewing up stuff and everything else. And I'm feeling more pain than I ever felt in my life. And I go, my God, I'm back. And the first promise they promised me was, more pain and suffering than I ever knew, and they didn't lie. And anyway, so I was in the hospital. It was supposed to be 4 days, and ended up being 4 weeks. And I had 5 blood transfusions, and I kept coming and going. And every time I would go to sleep, I'd have that battle back on the mountaintop again. I'd have this whole experience again where I'm being told, I got a choice. I could help these people and I see the people, or I could be this selfish person and just go and love peace and tranquility and enjoy all that stuff. And that battle was going on. And in the battle, every time I had the vision, this guru guy was saying, don't give up heart. You could skip a few beats, but don't give up heart. And I was just so tired of hearing it. So about 3.5 weeks in, I get a call on the phone next to my bed, just as they're putting me in a gurney for another procedure, because I'm just getting worse every day. And I pick it up, and this voice goes, Bill, this is Gornoff in India. Like I know so many Gornoffs, right? He had to narrow it down to one place, right? He goes, he says, I just sent, then he goes, he says, you could give up, he says, you could skip a few beats, but don't give up heart. And I go, what? He goes, you could skip a few beats, but don't give up heart. I go, what? So he said it 3 times. So a third time I'm going, holy cow, that's what I'm hearing every day is every time I go unconscious, right? You can skip a few beats, but don't give up heart. And that's the message out of his mouth that morning, right? And then he goes, I just sent 100 people up to the temple to pray for you because I told them I was going to heal you. Don't make me be a liar. Don't embarrass me. In other words, don't die. It's like, oh, good God. So anyway, so that whole experience, and then there was a Babaji experience after that, just before I left the hospital, which I don't know if you have time to hear, but it was just one thing after another. But that I don't know if you call that a near-death experience, a double body experience, a spiritual transforming experience. Um, but in essence, the body was not dead technically. It was being kept alive by being pumped oxygen and blood. And meanwhile, I'm in another body wandering around India, experiencing all that stuff on the other side. So it was interesting. So one of the other predictions that the Nadi made, which deals with this moment, was sometime during that same period, I go to the temple, that I'd have this visitation from Babaji or an emanation of Lord Shiva, and I'd be Christian, I'd be blessed, and there'd be oil and water and chanting and everything. And I thought, yeah, that ain't gonna happen either. But I'm laying there in the bed, in the hospital bed, the day before I check out, and it was like this glass bowl with punch bowls put over my bed. It's just energy, and I can't see anything outside of around my bed. It's just energy, and I'm feeling blissed out. And I look at the end of my bed, and there's Babaji standing there, no shirt, no shoes, long hair, except this Babaji's got Levi's on or jeans. It's America, right? Why not? And he's reaching from the bottom of the bed, and he's dabbing my forehead with oil and water, and he's chanting in some really interesting language I've never heard or don't remember hearing. It was just, but it was blissful, and I was just really enjoying it. And I thought, well, maybe I'm drugged out. Maybe I've been in the hospital too long. Who knows if it's in my imagination? It's a good imagination. It's a good experience, but I'm never sharing this because it's like crazy stuff, right? So I just let it go. I get home from the hospital, then my daughter sees me and she visits and she says, "Hey, Dad, our old neighbor David came and visited you, and on the day before you went home." I said, "No, he didn't." He says, "Oh yeah, he said he was there." And I said, "No, I didn't see him." He says, "Well, he came into your room and he saw you with some crazy young Indian guy with long black hair with no shirt on, no shoes on, pouring stuff on your forehead and chanting some crazy language that he started to laugh because he thought it was all strange and funny, and he left. He didn't want to embarrass you." So I thought, oh, maybe it really happened, you know, because obviously there was no setup for this guy to even see that. So anyway, so that was the three near-death experiences, how they kind of collide with each other, and it's like it's all part of the same thing. It's a puzzle, but now that you see all the pieces together, it takes me from a child wanting to go to Babaji's cave to going to Babaji's cave. And then at the end of this third near-death experience, just as I check out of the hospital, Babaji visits me. So it was like you couldn't have put it together any better if you're writing a novel. It was just that's the way it had to be. So that's the three near-death experiences, is leaving as much details out of this thing without taking up everybody's entire week to tell them the experience. It was one of those experiences. It takes only this much time, but in reality, it's like forever. It's like a moment is much larger than people realize. No, it may be a moment in this, but it's huge. It's time-wise, it's a lot. So that was my three near-death experiences. That's how they connected. I really see now the connections. All the roads led to the same place. It's all the same journey. Journey of a heart. So I go out and I give free workshops worldwide. Worldwide, I give free workshops on self-healing. I'm teaching people that the healer is you, the guru is you, the teacher is you. You're your own savior. Do some work. Ultimately, it's all got to come from you. Now, obviously, you and I both know, and people listening, they go, well, there's delusional. Yeah, there's delusional people out there. There's people that are not quite in tune with their self yet. And so having a mentor, having a teacher, having a guru, yeah, if the opportunity presents itself, because most people can't really see themselves, but eventually you reach a point where you realize it's all me. I got to do all the work. It's all within. There's nothing outside of you. It's all within. That's the secret. And it's just about three things I teach: love, forgiveness, and gratitude. There ain't nothing else. So if you teach that and you follow that, you don't need scriptures, you don't need sutras, you don't need stories, you don't need a minister, you don't need a temple, you don't need anything except love. When you find love, you found the doorway to real, true self-enlightenment. You ever notice all the great ones call it self-realization? They don't say realization through gurus, realization through teaching, realization through knowledge. It's always self-realization. Meaning ultimately, it's the awakening or the remembering and the reawakening of the real self, because it's already there. Everybody's already awakened. Everybody's already self-realized. We're just in this delusional stream that we're floating in thinking this is reality. But it's fun. And sometimes it's not.
How can people contact you?
They can go to my Facebook page, or they can go to my website, which is Rev Bill McDonald, or they can go to my YouTube page, which is called Rev Bill McDonald. My email address, Huey, Huey, 576 at gmail.com. They can contact me. I actually get a lot of email, but I actually make it a point to answer them. Everybody I add to my prayer list, everybody gets my attention somehow at some level. And but I'm out on the road or in the skies, as they say. I'm all over Europe. I'm going to be in Asia again. I'm going to be across the United States. I haven't been back to South America in a long time. Last time I was there, I was in Peru and Bolivia. And stay tuned for the book that has a working title. Don't have it yet, but AJ will be the first to know because I will tell him because he's putting it together for me. And I will be talking about these three, plus a little bit of memoir of things that have happened in the last year or so here, and some of my philosophy. So contacting me is good. I like to hear from people. Contacting the divine within you is even better.
Hi, I'm Paul Perry. I just finished re-releasing a book I wrote with Dr. Raymond Moody in 1990. The book is called Reunions. I want to thank AJ Parr for helping with the technical aspects of doing this book, doing the layout, and he had great advice on how to do a new cover, which he did, and it's beautiful. And all the technical aspects of reissuing a book and how to use Kindle Direct, which is a wonderful service, and communicating with Kindle Direct. But he was also more than that. It was moral support, He would read through the book, he would fact check, he did proofing for the book, and he made a number of really brilliant suggestions for editorial changes. So I highly recommend working with AJ Parr, and I'll be doing more books with him in the future. So thank you, AJ. I'll be dealing with you a lot more.
If you're interested in publishing your book in Amazon, contact me, and my publishing team and I will lend you a friendly hand. Send your email to ajparbooks@gmail.com. That's ajparbooks@gmail.com. Stairway to Heaven, 25 near-death experiences about our encounters with God, Jesus, and paradise. Journalistic research on real cases by A.J. Parr.
I looked down, there's no body. There's no me, but I felt just like me. And my first thoughts was, wow, this must be heaven. The whole Bible, Jesus, God thing is really true. And I said, if you're praying and you talk to God, it's just like that. It's God, you need to send people back so they can tell people it's real. Send some back. They have no idea this is real.
So there was quite a bunch of activity that they were doing during this time. And so, I know they were working on me really hard, but the whole time that I was gone, I went to heaven. So as far as what I was experiencing, it was wonderful, and I was able to see God and to see Jesus.
I turned and I said to this one leader character who had come and collected me, I said, "Who are you? Who are you exactly? You're not the same as these," because he was not the same as the other angels. And he seemed to be the one that was emanating this incredible love more than anyone else. And he just looked at me and said, "I am the one you call Lord." Now, for me, there's only one person in all of history that I call Lord, and that's Jesus. And this was Jesus that I was sitting in front of. And that really did overwhelm me at that point.
I remember feeling all this light, seeing light all around me. And I was just like, when you're in a deep state of meditation, when you go so deep that you don't see what's around you, you just become one with the light. So that's what happened to me. I became one with the light.
At that point, I was turned upward, my spirit was, and I was aiming towards the sky. And I saw a beautiful, bright white, but it isn't a white that we can describe. So it's the brightest light you could imagine here on Earth, but without being blinding.
I cannot die right now. You take me back. I have a lot to do right now. I said, no, you make a promise to me and you need to fulfill your promise. So welcome to heaven. From today, you're part of me and part of all of them. From today, you start walking with me and walking with all of them. Love is the most powerful force in the universe, and that's why I'm going to unite the whole humanity again. And then he said, okay, he put his hands around me and said, let's do a live review.
I just really became fascinated with the light and became just the joy and the love of God and just the peace of God just began to wash over me. And I just began to look at my arms and, it's not a light like you just turn on. I mean, this light had like particles. It was just like moving and just covering my arms and my body.
When I was enveloped with that bliss and joy, at first it was all just a bright, warm light. And then it started to settle down and take form. And it felt like I was in a cathedral, maybe with the marble walls and high ceiling or something, but it was still kind of misty looking. And I know that I had looked over to the right and I saw a good size, like an architect's table with a great big huge book, like a huge Bible or something, open about halfway. And I remember somebody telling me what was in that book. And I believe it was my life. And I was only halfway through.
Stairway to Heaven, 25 near-death experiences about our encounters with God, Jesus, and paradise. Journalistic research on real cases by A.J. Parr.
This has been the A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe.